I think everyone's finally in from the waiting room, so we're going to get started. Um, Hi, everyone. I'm joining today from Toronto, also known as Toronto, land that belongs to many Indigenous nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Wendat First Nations, and so many others. And I'd like to not only acknowledge this land, but use this time to make a call to action. And one of our guests tonight's actually poet Leah CL fundraised $20,000 last month for Toronto Indigenous harm reduction. And I encourage everyone here to support this really important organization by donating tonight as well. So I'm going to drop that link right now in the chat. I like to say that since tonight is like a free event, it's nice to think what would to redirect money you would spend on maybe a ticket to go to something tonight um, towards one of the towards donating. Sorry, I just stumbled on my words. And this organization is doing a lot of amazing things. And if you have more questions, I'm sure Leah would love to talk about their work with Toronto Indigenous harm reduction. So you can always message them in the chat too, maybe after they're done reading. Okay, and now welcome to Cross-Pollinations, a curatorial research platform that explores relationships between poetry and healthcare, funded by the League of Canadian Poets, the Health Arts Research Centre, and the Canadian Association for Health Humanities. I'm Mick Jones, and I curate the series. And tonight I am so thrilled to be joined by artist Leah CL and poet-physician Lori-Anne Noyahr for Shifts in Practice. We'll be hearing poetry and reflections from tonight's guests about their experiences of lived transitions that shape and inform their various practices. And when I read both Leah and Lori-Anne's poetry, transitions appear not only as a subject or a theme, but as a kaleidoscopic lens to see life through. And I am so inspired by that. Some of the transitions you'll be hearing about tonight include shifts from med school to practicing medicine, from performing piano to performing poetry, into motherhood, across genders, in unmasking autism, through grief. So we're really trying to stretch transitions as far as we can and its overlap in these artists' poetics and also their experience in healthcare spheres. So transitions are famously uncomfortable, and also they're dense with possibility, and you'll feel wells and wells of possibility listening to Lori-Anne and Leah tonight. Moments of transition urge us to listen, and so do these poets, to listen to ourselves, to our bodies, and most importantly, to each other. We'll hear first from Lori-Anne and then from Leah, and conclude with a discussion period during which everyone in the audience is welcome to throw in any questions. So you can pop those in the chat at any point, and I'll be collecting them to ask the artists. And now it's my absolute honor to introduce poet-physician Lori-Anne Noyahr. Lori-Anne holds a certificate in narrative-based medicine and incorporates storytelling into her medical practice and in wellness workshops for other physicians. Her poetry has appeared or is forthcoming in Ars Medica, Auscultation, a Health and Humanities podcast, the Healing Muse, In Training, Poetry Pulse, Ricepaper, and the chapbooks Spring Peepers and Adventitious Sounds. Tonight, we'll be hearing from one of her in-progress chapbooks, and I have had the absolute pleasure to have a sneak peek, and I'm so excited for everyone else here to have the joy of listening. So please join me in welcoming Lori-Anne.
Thank you so much for that introduction and for having me here. I'm really honored to be here today to share some of my poetry in the theme of transitions. But before I get started, I would also love to share a little bit more about myself as a physician and some of my work in the field of narrative-based medicine, just to contextualize some of this poetry. So in my clinical practice, I am an anesthesiologist and I work in a very busy community center here in the Greater Toronto area. But I also have an interest in the health and humanities discipline of narrative-based medicine. I've been working with the narrative-based medicine lab at University of Toronto, and also working to bring this field of medicine to some of our trainees so that new generations of clinicians can also engage in this self-reflective work. And as a physician who works full-time, it's been really a helpful space for me too, not just to get back into writing, but also as a space for self-reflection in my practice. And for those of you who aren't entirely familiar with the term narrative-based medicine, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce it to you. So basically, narrative-based medicine is a health and humanities discipline, and it looks at storytelling in medicine and clinical practice. It was coined in 2000 by a physician named Rita Sharon, who developed this into a field and founded a very beautiful health and humanities program at Columbia University. Now, I mean, people have been writing about their illness experiences for hundreds of years, and clinicians about their practice of medicine for a long time as well. But this discipline helps to formalize it and modernize it, and to make it also accessible. For people out there who maybe don't consider themselves writers or don't consider themselves coming from a literary background, because it still is a framework where we can analyze stories. So there's three main tenets that I'll just talk about, and they are attention, representation, and affiliation. So this idea of attention is the idea that there's stories everywhere, and we just have to become attuned to them. And for people who may not be writers or avid readers, narrative medicine hopes to foster those close listening skills through close readings of texts and analysis of art. Representation is this act of allowing clinicians and patients to actually give form to all of those complex experiences and actually write them down, put them down in words or by creating art. And affiliation is exactly what we're trying to do here in webcasts like this. And that's the creation of these deep human connections, exploring the human condition that we can make just through listening to and sharing of each other's stories and learning from each other. So I'm really delighted to be here today to talk about writing and medicine. And before I get started, I will also say one quick thing about anesthesia, because when people think of physicians, they don't often think of anesthesiologists. We are oftentimes absent from media portrayals of medicine, but we are there, hidden during moments often of great transitions in patients' lives, during major surgeries, labor and delivery, and we care for people through some of their most vulnerable moments. These moments then go on to transform our worlds and our lives too. So much of what I experience in medicine informs my values, my identity, and my relationships also outside of work. So I am currently working on a collection of poetry, exploring some of these moments and many transitions, such as from training to clinical practice, life transitions like motherhood, and the transition from the often sterile world of medicine to this more holistic approach to wellness and health. So thank you so much for having me today, and I'm excited to read some samples from my collection. After the match, we dozed on a deflating mattress, sinking towards each other's hearts, new dreams buzzing to the arrival of each subway car below. How hard we fought to wake together, walk together on this cold pallet of concrete between the dazzling teeth of pointed towers, unsure if in their shadows we are sheltered as mouth-brewed roe, or simply waiting to be consumed. Force. How much does she weigh? 8 pounds, multiplied by the gravity of a heart accelerating with fluctuating joy and fear. She weighs the universe crushed against my chest. The neophyte. I taught my daughter words as I knew them, distilling our world to trees and bushes, grass and flowers, insects and birds. In the nursery, a felted flock circled the cot, and on nights I wasn't working, I pointed to each bird before her eyelids drooped, sang goodnight to red wing and golden tail, black beak and big blue. And so she first learned colors, shapes, then echoed words as I paced around her stacked blocks, revising for exams. Trauma and transfusion. With me, we fluffy Tayson. She was nearly 6 when surgery and classes shuddered to temper mass contagion. Suddenly, together, we nudged margins of routine, playtime without cue cards, trampling vacant schoolyards, searching for balls beyond the vine screen fence into the ravine where she walked with playmates, teachers, but never me. And there, in the thawing spring, she skipped ahead, greeting trees and sing-song. Good morning, Oak. How are you, Maple? And I, on high alert for strangers, pulled her back, startled by a reply. Clear, 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 a wicka, 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 wick. She unfolded from my grasp to gesture to the orator above, speckled, red-capped, mustachioed, and I sighed, relieved that it was just a bird. Northern flicker, she corrected. Unrest. I have not slept. The hour is apparent upon retreat from the operating room's perpetual light. In the hallway, faltering fluorescent bulbs cast empty stretchers in chiaroscuro. A raccoon paces just beyond the hospital's glass doors, raising her head briefly so that our red eyes meet. When finally the plastic pillow rustles in my ear, my eyelids almost close until the pager buzzes. My thumping heart sends blood to heavy legs, and I rise again in automated march. I work until dawn breaks, until the coffee shop reopens. I will not sleep. A warm flask soothes the ache of tired hands. Hot sips loosen my clenched jaw. My baby staggers on the ice as a teacher glides beside her. I thought I was too tired, but my laughter echoes hers. I film her for a moment, capturing her sudden fall, shattering my screen when she does not rise. In the night, I would deftly reach a mask of oxygen, midazolam in a syringe, but here I scream, feeling the heat of spilled coffee on my thighs only after I confirm her breaths against my cheek. Waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting until sirens burst and her snowsuit stops rippling, her chest finally rising at a calm and steady tempo. I cannot sleep, although I know the steps ahead, the color of the walls, the shape of faces under masks, the scent of sickly sweet vapor. Although I have reassured parents in my place and sang their children winsome lullabies, my daughter's face blends into memories of drowsy children waking to ice lollies, then into blue lips and trembling hands and desperate, wailing voices disappearing into silent grief, poisoning the air. I have not slept. I will not sleep. I cannot sleep until she wakes again. The healer. Just beyond the parking lot, my husband chases our daughter through the trails of the Rouge Valley as they await a break between my cases to visit the Hopstable, where she was born, where I still work on weekends. And when, after countless false starts, I am able to receive them in the lobby, she anoints my cheeks with petrichor kisses, carrying a healing garden in her hair, curls ensnared with golden mullein flowers, bursts of jewel weed, beads of purple clover, and a lacy veil of yarrow. She replaces the pager in my fist with heaps of wood sorrel from her pockets until my palms, now open, overflow with heart-shaped leaves. And I have one more poem from my set. Thank you so much for your attention. This one's called Solace. We grieve. The bodies of salmon, glinting scales barely discerned from riverbed, while goldenrod and clusters blaze a funeral pyre along the shore. We chase shadows beneath turbulence, cheering when reanimated tails flick crystals into air, making fleeting rainbows. On a slip of gray, we watch a silver flame burst from the water before contracting on the jagged edges, hurtling further and further until she suddenly arrests. Trapped between heavy stones, her thrashing slows to stillness. We adults murmur, is this the end? Has her time come and gone? But the children do not hesitate, toes blanching in the cold, they traverse rocks to leave her their small hands beneath her weight, groaning until she arches and once again ignites, fades to a ragged cinder in the next dark pool. We walk on knowing we may see her yet again unflinching on these stones, but perhaps with scales transmuted brown, tail marked from the mining of her red, in a future where grief transforms to hope.
Thank you so much, Lori-Anne. Wow, that was incredible. I'm so grateful for you sharing tonight your poetry and more about your medical practice. And the way your poetry lights up that medical practice is so deeply exhilarating. And each piece is just so embodied, and you really hold us there with you in all the complexity of providing care. So amazing. Thank you, Lori-Anne.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yay. We turn now to our next performer, Leah CL, who it is my pleasure to introduce. The poet, musician, and abolitionist with a day job in children's publishing. In their 32 short years, they've identified as LGBTNQ, and now they're working on the plus. They're also working on co-curating a zine called Piss Press. And before discovering Leah's work as a poet, I was an avid fan of their pop music project, Donna, and I highly recommend after this reading tonight, you go stream their song, Have You Ever Heard of Being Gay? Like, stream it as soon as possible. It's truly perfect for any moment of the day. I also just want to note that Leah's 2024 chapbook, Hink Poems, is a profoundly vivid account of grief that I keep on my bedside table for long, hard nights. And when I turn to it, I am so helped. Please join me in welcoming Leah CL.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, so as Mick, thank you for the extra Donna plug. If you haven't heard of Being Gay yet, I would recommend checking it out on Spotify. But as Mick said, tonight I'll be reading work that deals with transition as it pertains to grief. So the transition of someone being alive to being dead, or to someone being present in your life to no longer being accessible in the world at all. Transition as it relates to the difficulty of transitions for some neurodivergent people, and transness, of course, which runs throughout the whole thing. But as I was putting together these poems, like I kept finding new definitions of transition and new ways it shows up in my work. So I also, you'll hear in here, abolition as transition or revolution as transition. So, like from a status quo we've always known, and in most of our cases benefited from, to a new future that's difficult to imagine. And also movement as transition, diaspora as transition, transition as the interstitials. So, like the pronouns or other short words that tie everything together, the rests in music, which is what gives music rhythm, the paratext, so, or when you're performing, the moments you take in between your pieces, including this spiel I'm giving you right now. So I hope you can spot some of those themes in my work tonight, and I'm sure Mick will dive in more when they talk to Lori-Anne and I. And thanks, Lori-Anne, for your poetry. It's like such an honor to go after you. This first poem is called Little Dyke. When I was a boy, It was summer, and my mom said the Gap was air conditioning the whole world. This was years before the inconvenient truth of who I am, but we headed straight for the side of the store my mom said was more practical, with the camo pants and t-shirts with long sleeves sewn on underneath short ones, which my mom said was stupid. On the other side were the shirts with sequins and flared sleeves that looked twirly, and my mom said absolutely not. So although I was a little gay boy, I pretended I didn't want to be girly that day. There were these gray sneakers, and the thing about these shoes is that they were slip-ons with gray bits and red bits, and I pleaded and pleaded because I wasn't allowed the light-up kicks or the wheelies or the sparkles or the frills, and those gray sneakers looked bulky on my little boy feet in just the right way. My mom said Velcro is for babies as she paid for the shoes. My mom said I'd get bullied, but I didn't know enough kids to know bullies or friends either. This was before I joined soccer and heard the boys yell scaredy cat. I thought I was one of them in my sneakers. I thought I was from the boys' side, but they were unreachable and my team lost, and I didn't even have sequins to show for it. This next one is called Angle. I'm growing a wing out of the left side of my back, and you want to talk about bathrooms? Who can go in which one? What little words? To talk shit about them? My shoulder blade is sprouting pinions, whole new bones cracking and bulging. And you want to say who gets slapped with a mischief charge, patted on the back and sent home? Who stays out? Who lives in the tents by the lake? You want to argue which liberation is linked and which is conveniently unlinked? Convenient for who? And my back is killing me this whole time, by the way. In university, the boy most outgoing, while not shitty, had what he called an angel patch on his left shoulder blade, interrupting creamy freckles, sudden thicket of brownish blonde hair left by the passing of a wing. Or wherever he got it, angel or God, there is no such thing on Google as an angel patch. There were a lot of things missing on the internet then, but it's rare now. And people compared us to each other, which was flattering because outgoing, not shitty, and boy. And we were voted to MC the talent show, and we switched outfits halfway through. I came out in a baggy silver suit, him in my roommate's red dress, hair popping out the back. And the people went nuts, and we looked amazing. Now Google only knows the medical term for angel patch. And you want reform? This next one is called EGBDF. Every good boy deserves fudge if they walk the line. Every little boy dreams of an overpowering woman and infinite Turkish delight. I understand how Edward felt. Icy glare and warm breast, real fur and cold air. I'd sell my soul too for some of that candy if it means I get to be a good boy. So as I teased at the beginning about neurodivergence, something I learned is that people with autism or ADHD can struggle with transitions. And I have both of those things. So I have a double whammy of that struggle. And so, for example, I struggle with the transition from day to night, which is happening right now, going up the stairs in my apartment, getting into bed, getting into the shower, getting out of the shower. And since I wasn't diagnosed until adulthood, a big part of those diagnoses for me is also the transition of someone from someone not disabled to someone who's technically disabled or now understands that about myself. So this is one of the first poems I wrote after I was diagnosed, and it's called ADHD or I Knew Before They Told Me. Scatter me. Cast me to the four winds, east to the future, west to my past. Ah! Spread me thin, so I can cover everything at once. Everyone would be jealous if they knew how this feels, to be compelled by you. Make me ecstatic. Forget the keys. With you, time is elastic. Stretch me till I break. And I got that autism and ADHD diagnosis just a couple months before Israel began its renewed genocide on Palestine. I bought a condo. My partner and I moved in together for the first time. She got a new job, and my father died. And that was all within about a couple weeks. So it was a time of great transition overall. And as Mick showed you, I wrote a chapbook about it called Hank Poems. And so here are a few poems from that or on that theme. This one's called My Father Dying in November 2023 of All Times. I live 3,408 kilometers away from where my father will die tomorrow. These days, they'll come right to your house to kill you. 9,300 clicks from here, other fathers are being killed in their homes too. 11,000 this month. Shut it down, we cry in the streets. My father got to make a choice. He worried it was shameful. But when I yell shame these days in crying crowds, it's about those who had no choice at all, far from my body or his. How can I keep my eyes on both? How can I? Voice wet with tears. Shame. I live on land that isn't mine, and my father is dying on it. This one's called Hit Hard, and it's not in Hank Poems because it's inspired by the art of Lawrence Weiner, who I saw at the art I saw at the Tate Modern, and this was on my father's birthday. It was the first one after he had died. And it includes some quotes from Lawrence Weiner's text art. It's called Hit Hard. Crying at the gallery, we held hands, ran through rain, attached to each other, crossed over that bridge from those movies, and just on the other side, hit hard. Nothing is like I thought it would be about this, his birthday and his death. In another month, it'll be a year, and all the ampersands are still in parentheses. I'm still getting notifications about death at the fancy restaurant, still crying at the gallery. And in another year, I hope we're still holding hands. I'll never hold his again, and I'll still be writing text above and below that one big line. I don't think there is another side to this. Obviously, transition shows up in all kinds of ways in these, but something I think is kind of funny about grief is that when you're grieving, you're still trans, or when you're grieving, you're still all the things you normally are. So when I was grieving, I was still trans. When you're celebrating being trans, though, you're also still grieving, right? Grief makes everything intersectional. Nothing is ever uncomplicated again. So here's another poem from Hank Poems. It's called Topo Chico. On the 7th day after my father chose to die, I woke up craving Topo Chico. Chat, is this normal? Yesterday, I lost a pint of blood by choice. I was a splodge of hot pink pigment on the Toronto scape. I was a visit to the library. I was a hug with a stranger outside the computer store. I was my father's daughter. I don't even know what Topo Chico tastes like. The awful daring of final surrender, which a lifetime of indecision can never retract. Moments of inaction, so precious I must act. Yesterday I saw a TikTok of someone drinking Topo Chico. He said it was helping with his transition. But what if I don't want to be a man? What if I don't want to? I don't want to. I don't. But that was the best ad I've ever seen. And Topo Chico didn't even pay him. Mick, how much time do I have left?
You're good.
Okay, how much?
Like, I think another 4 or 5 minutes. So
Okay, great.
take that as you will.
Well, that's great because I have another 4 or 5 poems for you. Another way, okay, I said that transition as interstitials. So like, that could also be, how a poem is broken or how it elides together. So I picked this one. It's called Stay. It's hard to live in the present, moment to moment, palms to microplastic, hard to remember, to pee, to breathe in. The past, I wrote, will they kill me with the lesbians or the Jews? What would it matter? I'll still scream. Guess I'm still screaming now. I'm getting older, but the song remains the same. Cling to the doorframe or hold my fag head high when they knock. Must I look straight at the sun and squint or raise an arm? Salute the oppressors. They're getting bolder. As in the past, so in the present. It's hard to live. This next one's called Man Dream. Actually, no, I'm going to do this. I'll finish with Man Dream. So tell me when I have like 1 minute left, okay? This one's called City Song. Well, it's one of a series of city songs I do. So this one's City Song 12. Nothing, I mean nothing makes me feel more than trans it. It rocks me to sleep, soothes my farm-locked little girl soul, satisfies my big boy urges to talk to some man or other who wants to yell at my girlfriend. Instead, we sing a song together, he and I. We sway. We talk about what he's going to name his daughter one day. This is how I began writing again, this time of night. It's all gays and old men riding their sorrows down the line. Old men with young eyes, whose bed is the subway, bus, plastic bags around feet, some of the only men I like. I know not all are kind, no different from us. This is one last one about grief. And I thought it was kind of cool for this session because it's called left neglect, which I learned is the medical term for the condition after a stroke where there's a lack of awareness or function on the recovering side of the body. So in this case, the left side, because the stroke was on the right side of the brain. So this is left neglect. Tea I brewed for him, sipped on cold by me instead. Is life so short? One dish, one spoon breakfast with parents on stolen land. The only fruit I knew back then was apple, orange, banana. I think my parents were afraid of the others, putting ideas into my head. Now my girlfriend is showing them how a pineapple roots. 3 juvenile gulls floating against the wind, out of time. I heard triangles are the strongest shape, but when one point leaves, all that's left is a thin, hard line. When I left, I hugged him tight, left neglect, not neglected. He hugged me back with his right, alone. 31 years of hugs, but I have to remember this one. Okay, and I'll finish off with Man Dream. Is that good? Okay. One last trans one for the road. Man Dream. I got to peek inside a man's mind. Rare treat. After all, fellas, isn't it gay to dream? He dreamt of getting fired and stealing tools from the job site, angry, didn't know why they were firing him. His dog was there too, got hit by a door or something. Insult to injury. In the dream, dog tucked under his arm. He gathered his personal stuff, hauled the tools in a little high-tech cart that followed him, back to his truck, and I took notes. Men dream of trucks and hauling. Men dream of getting their stuff and throwing the fob for the little cart into a big gravel pit where it exploded. Boom, he said. Yes, men dream of gravel pits. And maybe I will too, if I try hard enough. Instead of dreamless stoner sleep, I will dream of explosions. Instead of my first girlfriend, whose last name I forgot years ago, wearing faces that aren't hers, I will dream of tools. Instead of ass hair and weight gain, maybe tea would give me dreams, where I tuck my dog under my arm, peel out gravel under my tires, and blow everything up behind me. Thank you.
Leah, thank you for that reading. Wow, it just felt like being at a concert. It was so musical and full of so much breath. I absolutely feel so grateful to witness it.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna invite Lori-Anne also back to the virtual stage. Perfect, thank you, Nick. For our discussion. So, first of all, congrats both of you on two astounding readings. Um, I would love to hear from both of you now, maybe some reflections. Initially, I was going to say like reflections on each other's practice after sharing aside one another, but also it could be like reflections on each other's readings tonight, maybe like initial impressions. Maybe Lori-Anne, you could start and give Leah a little breathing break after that awesome reading.
Yeah. Wow, Leah, such beautiful work. I just love so much of the striking imagery that you had. It just, it's like you transplanted your memories into me. Like I felt them so viscerally, and I really just, yeah. I love that city song, being on the transit. I just felt like what it is to be alive in the city, and that's just gonna many of your poems like this will just stay with me for a long time. Left Neglect, like brought tears to my eyes. So thank you so much for sharing these extremely vulnerable moments with us to like now they also become part of us.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I say it in the poem, but that's how I started writing again, was being on the subway all the time. And I was like, I'm so inspired here. Like, you're in transition while you're on the subway, you're like with all these other people in transition. It's really unique. So I'm so glad that they all struck you like that. And I was like, am I defining these medical terms wrong? There's a real doctor here. So, thanks for being here and bringing your work. I really like your work was so approachable. I was like, wow, what's it going to be like to hear a physician poet? Because to me, medical stuff is like so over my head, and feels so like dense and scary. And first of all, I really appreciate the breakdown you gave before you started reading your poetry about your practice. And it's always really exciting to find ways that the medical system is being made more accessible. But then, yeah, your work, the thing I took away the most, like you just said, oh, I'll be taking your poetry with you. Like me too, but I don't know if it'll be in this like peaceful, fun way. Like I really found throughout your pieces, maybe it's just me, but there was this real like anxiety I felt that was so powerful. Just about you spoke when we met before about the transition from motherhood, from not being a mother to motherhood or parenthood. And, when I have always pictured what it would be like to have a child, that fear of their welfare is just like, I can feel it even as someone who doesn't have a child whatsoever, other than my cat. And to really feel that coming through your poetry was like, it gave me a glimpse of what that must really be like, this thing I've always kind of imagined. So, yeah, that was really powerful. I can only imagine how much more powerful and pervasive that feeling must have been for those in the audience who are parents. So, yeah, it was really cool. Like, I just think it works on multiple levels.
Thank you. I mean, I think it's just so interesting that we're coming from all these different perspectives, but we still touched on some of these main themes, right? Both dealing with grief in our own way and all these difficult things in life. And it makes me feel so honored to be able to connect with you and like feel your stories. And yeah, thank, thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe too, kind of jumping off of what Leah was saying, Lori-Anne, I'm sure everyone would love to hear more about kind of the relationship between your narrative medicine work and your poetry writing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm still finding space within narrative medicine. As I said, it was a very healing thing for me. It was very isolating going into practice during the time of the pandemic, high rates of burnout, people feeling really disconcerted with the Canadian medical system, which, still sometimes is struggling in a lot of places. And I think just having a space to sit down and be able to write about medicine and write about how it's impacting me. And also, even though I didn't write, and nothing I read was about patients directly, like I still feel that because patients' lives are impacting me, I can still honor them and like honor our work in the healthcare system and strive towards being like a more compassionate individual so that we can improve and bring better patient care to everyone and make healthcare more accessible to people. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I really found that too in what you were saying at the beginning and that framework, and then also like the what Leah was mentioning of your work, the framing of your poetry of these clinical experiences and that kind of different access it gives us of like hearing about it through your poetry. And kind of on the flip side of that question, Leah, I'm so curious also as someone who is neurodivergent and transgender of kind of I mean, it's a massive question, so there's no way it can be totally answered, but and maybe pick one or the other of like how these aspects of these things you live with and like how it informs and shapes your poetry writing practice.
Um, I mean, I thought you might be like, how does transness inform your poetry practice? And I prepared what I think is the classic and like perhaps over said, like boring queer theorist answer, but like I'm trans, so therefore everything I do is trans, and therefore all my poetry is trans poetry. It's imbued with transness. And that is beautiful to me. Like I'm so proud of that. And then same thing for neurodivergence. I'm newer to identifying with that. So I don't even, I think, see yet all the ways that, of course, everything I do is neurodivergent. I mean, I only found that out 2 years ago. And so, um, whereas I've been noticing how everything I do is queer, since I was a teen, at least. And so, yeah, but I mean, by that same dint, like everything I do is neurodivergent, and it's exciting and silly and fun and frustrating and poetic to notice how that does show up, without me even having realized it. And now with my awareness sometimes in all my poetry. I mean, it's kind of like what I said about grief. It's like everything is intersectional. We already know this, but it's interesting to live it and to see it show up in your work. These themes like intersectionally.
That's an amazing answer, and actually so much more of a catch-all than I think I could have ever imagined being able to answer myself at least. Um, and um, and kind of also in that same vein of looking a little closer into your practice, Lori-Anne, I'd love to also hear about you were mentioning kind of like arriving into narrative medicine during the pandemic and the burnout that was happening there. And then I'm curious about I know you host like writing workshops for other physicians, and I think it'd be so cool to hear about those.
I mean, this is just a new practice for me, so I'm still learning too. But um, it's basically just taking the idea of storytelling and introducing it to our trainees because I feel like the last generation of clinicians were very much, technical based, um, some emphasis on bedside manner, but often not. And I think we're seeing huge sweeping changes in medicine now. First of all, um, there's more women in medicine, which for some reason has caused a shift to talk more about um, like work-life balance and finding kindness and listening to stories and listening to patients a little bit more. And so you're seeing these huge shifts, especially in technical specialties like anesthesia, where it's often very reductive to your technical skills and like medications, drugs, dosages, all technical stuff. And now we're seeing that, patients are still coming to us during these vulnerable times, and you can't just reduce it to technical skills because all these moments matter to patients, and all these difficult moments are not just the sum of techniques, even for us as practitioners. They all affect us, and we carry a lot of these difficult burdens, difficult cases, things that we feel are bad outcomes, all in our hearts. And if we don't have a way to kind of process and metabolize those stories, and then there's just no support and people burn out. And then we have even less people caring for others within our medical system. So I think the idea behind trying to do wellness workshops and looking into telling these stories is to help train this newer generation into really remembering the humanity about why we went into medicine in the first place, and to just try to keep that there when you're practicing all of your technical skills.
I really feel you doing that in your poetry too. So I can only imagine you doing that in your medical practice. Um, and that's like a humanity I so feel in the directness of your writing, Leah. The way you use really direct language and address your reader so both casually and firmly and playfully and deeply. And kind of thinking about what you were mentioning when you were talking about with your diagnosis of autism and ADHD and kind of reckoning with the difficulty of transitions. I'm curious about how you are working with that, and maybe for like other neurodiverse writers who are in the room, like how you're working with that difficulty of transitions in your actual writing practice of like getting into the writing and getting into the poems,
That's a
and
really
what that's
good,
looking like for you
that's a really
now.
good like logistical question. What saves me is the Notes app. I mean, I'm sure there's at least one or two other people here who live and die by the Notes app, and it's just right there. And I think okay, here's my answer, is that a big part of um the importance to me of getting these diagnoses. I mean, ultimately I'm the same person as I was before I got them. So the really important part of it for me has been the self-talk and how I see my actions and how I judge them, or now perhaps don't judge them the same way. And I can just say to myself, oh, that I think that's probably ADHD, or like, oh, you know what? I think that might be your autism, which is it's fun. It's like a joyful thing instead of all the things I used to tell myself in my head, which we won't get into. So, um, I think to get into writing, like, and that transition where you're like, I want to write, and then the instinct for me anyway is that everything has to be perfect. I need to like have like a table, like a notebook. It's got to be the right notebook, the right pen. Oh, I can't find a pen. Like next thing I know, whatever. Like what was I even going to write? I'm doing the dishes now. Like who knows, right? And so like for me, what's been exciting, freeing, relieving, productive, is and like aligned in terms of bringing those things together for me is just knowing, oh, you can just pick up the Notes app and write, or you could write something down on anything. Like you could actually just like, writing doesn't have to be an activity. I think once something is like something I want to do, and it's like, or have to do, and it's on the list, it's like, suddenly it's this huge thing. And then we know, I'm sure lots of us relate to like the email that goes unsent for 3 months and it's a 3-line email, And so let's not let our writing be like that. You don't even have to be a writer. You don't have to be anything to write, right? It's like speaking. So, yeah, just forgiving myself and just picking up the phone and writing on it, and writing on the toilet, writing when my partner's asleep and I'm just lying in bed, like writing on the subway, all those transitional interstitial times. It's all going together. But yeah.
I love that urgency of like just do it. And I can feel that too in your writing. Like it is so urgent. Um, and also for you, Lori-Anne, I'm like so curious about writing as a working doctor. And you know, we have a lot of doctor poets on this series, and everyone seems to have a different way of being able to work their art into their medical practice. And we'd love to hear about your how that works for you.
Also the Notes app. But I feel you very strongly on that. But I think, before I used to try to write kind of like whenever I felt like or when the moment moved me, and I just found that I wasn't being moved because I was just so busy. And I kind of really actually did need to make space for it. So actually structuring time where putting it on the family calendar and being like, "Oh, mom's gonna go right now," and my kids would be like, "Really?" But just putting a couple of hours aside here and there to try to make it happen, especially now that I'm trying to work on a project of like a collection, it actually requires dedicated time. So, still a work in progress.
Feel like it is kind of one of those lifelong questions. So it's I feel like I'm asking everyone these days, being like, how does it happen for you? um, and following that thread, I'm going to pose the same question to both of you, which is something that really excited me. Like a rhyme between both of your experience was going to school for one thing, and that thing not being poetry, but then poetry becoming like a big part of your life. And I'd love to hear a little bit about that transition of like what you carried over from what you studied in school. So for Leah, Leah studied performance piano. What's the technical term for the?
Um, well, do you want me to just say, I'll answer your question.
Yeah, you answer
Okay.
first, and then Lori-Anne.
So I have a degree in piano performance, and then I also got a degree in journalism. So I mean, there's writing in journalism.
Yeah.
But and now my day job has nothing to do with either of those things. But you know, I work, my day job is in books. I'm a salesperson for a big book publisher. And people don't understand what that means, so they think that I have the power to publish their book. So classically, people always, when they find out I work in books, they're like, I was thinking of the book. And what someone said to me once, like my boss or somebody, kind of joking about this, is they said everyone has a book in them. And I think that's true. Like we all do have a book in us, actually. And so I felt like that since I was a kid. Like I've been writing since I was a kid, and I was always really like, it's a book. Like I have to write a whole book. Oh my gosh, like how do I even find time for that? And then the older you get, like, you know, I certainly don't have time to be like writing a book, but I do have time to write a poem. And so that's that's why I got back into writing through poetry. I was like, I could sit down and write a poem in like 5 minutes and then edit it later and then submit it somewhere. And there you go. Boom, I'm doing it. I'm writing my book, you know? So it doesn't have to be a full book. So I think that's that transition that I made. I mean, yeah, I don't know if I ever really wasn't writing poetry, but looking at it that way, giving myself the permission to call it that, I think that was more so the transition.
And also, so I'm going to extend this question for you. What about like from your music studies? Do you feel like you brought over to poetry, which I'm sure is a lot, but I'd love to hear like one
I
standout.
mean, like, yeah, I think I, for a while there, forgot my degree was a performance degree. I was like, my piano degree that I barely use or whatever. And, the more I get into performing through poetry, I mean, I've always been like an orator and all this stuff, so that's not new either. But, the skills are all the same. Like, it's about whatever, holding you, the audience, gently so that you feel comfortable in the artistic world that Lori-Anne and I are creating. So I think that it's definitely, that stuff is things that I have really been taught and learned, perhaps not even realizing that that's where they're coming out. So yeah, it's stuff that has really, it's in my bones from my previous schooling.
Well, you can sure feel it listening to you read. And Lori-Anne, I would love to hear about like what has carried over from your med school studies into your poetry work.
Well, I mean, I think I'm fortunate that at the moment they're very complementary to each other. And, you know, poetry is helping me kind of realize many of the reflective processes, like to make me a better physician. So that is nice. But I think now that I'm trying to write poetry more regularly, I realize that like things like I do need to structure things, as I was saying before. And I think like the discipline of medicine does help with that and helping you structure things. And also in our specialty, there is you have to always know when to ask for help. But you have to know your weaknesses and your strengths. And as
Mhm.
someone who's really coming new to the world of poetry, I really had to search for opportunities to ask for help because I don't have a literary background. And so it's things like this and the League, which has provided all these different opportunities. Like I also applied for a mentorship, and now I'm like set up with this wonderful mentor who has all this literary background. I get to meet people who have completely different world experiences, but learn from the power of their words, your words and your poetry, Leah, and like be completely inspired by it. So I think knowing your weaknesses and when to ask for help and then reaching out and being able to take that help and grow as a person, I think that came from medicine, but I am just like so delighted to be able to apply that in the writing world and to have people reach out and say, yes, here's some help. Here's some ways to grow. Yeah.
Wow, that was such an awesome answer from both of you. And I feel like those are such learnings that are really practical, and every one of us here can apply, whether you're coming from the medical world or you're coming from the poetry world tonight, or all the other many subspheres there are out here. Um, so I just want to thank you both, Leah and Lori-Anne, for joining us tonight and for your absolutely moving, impactful, phenomenal readings. I loved how much we stretched this theme to encompass a lot within health and poetry. And I wasn't sure if maybe I was really trying to be a little too ambitious this time, but you both have proved me so wrong that you have all of that capacity in you, and we found so much rhyme throughout it. And thank you to everyone here for joining. We had such a wonderful, lively chat tonight, and so many people in this Zoom room. And I know for when I look forward to this hour of the month, all throughout the month leading up to it, to sit here and reflect on different intersections of practice and being, and to be in health and poetry together. So a little virtual round of applause for our incredible poets this evening. And thank you to all our audience. There will be news on the next Cross-Pollinations dropping soon. And we hope to see you there in November. Until then, this was Shifts in Practice. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you, Mick.